Hello, scholars. My name is Ira McIntosh, and this is Hypothesis. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to my office. It's time for another episode of Hypothesis. And today's episode, I always say this, but today's episode is really amazing, and I had a fantastic time recording it. I didn't know what to expect going into this episode because I have my own history and my own background with the church. And my guest today works in a church, is a pastor, and honestly, I was a little nervous. I didn't know. I don't confront that part of my history a lot. So I didn't know what to expect from this episode. And it turned out so incredibly great. And I had such a fantastic conversation and really thought that we got to talk about a lot of stuff that I think some people might feel challenged by, and that's so good, and that's what I want from this podcast. So I hope that you learned something from this episode, just like I did, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Dr. Xavier Small. Dr. Small, PhD, LCPC, NCC, BCTMH, has roots in pastoral counseling, where he spent over a decade focused on relationships and family systems. As a licensed therapist, he carries that same focus into clinical work, using emotion-focused therapy and body-up approaches in individual and relational therapy. He found a private practice in Baltimore and serves as an internship coordinator at a community mental health center. We talked about counseling and how that works in a faith-based setting. We also talked about what it means to have a mentor and why mentors are necessary, and also how to carry that practice forward. So I really hope that you enjoy, and please help me welcome Dr. Xavier Small. Yeah, I'm getting nervous because as we get closer to summer, my apartment faces, oh, which direction is that? South. My apartment faces south, and so I get sun all day, every day. So I closed my shades because it's starting to get really hot, and I'm hoping I don't start sweating in the middle of this, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I hear you. I wishing for coolness to come into your apartment today.
Right. Oh, I need some AC in my life. So to start everything off, I always like to ask my guests to just kind of talk about their academic background and how they got to the point they're at. Because you just got your PhD, right? You just passed.
I did. Yeah, I did. Thank
Congratulations.
you very much. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, where
Yeah.
where'd you grow up? Why did you do a PhD? What is it in? All of those things.
Yeah. So a PhD was never the plan, which sounds so crazy. It was never the plan. I never had any intention of I always actually said I didn't want to become a doctor of any kind because I didn't want to wait until I was in my 30s to enjoy it. And here I am at 34 with a PhD. So actually I come from a very low socioeconomic background. My mom was a single mom, three kids, worked really hard to provide for us. Sometimes it would mean she was working two or sometimes three jobs, just to kind of make ends meet. And that came with its own host of challenges. We were evicted sometimes, and the lights were cut off sometimes, and you know what I'm saying. My mom worked hard to make sure that we would be able to be in a place where like we had a roof over our head and food to eat. And so I always said, well, I want to go do something lucrative with my life. I want to go be an attorney. You know what I mean? I want to go to law school, so that I can make, good wages and live at least a moderately comfortable life. And I just think it's interesting because when my mom was 30, my mom is 22 years older than I am. So when my mom was around 30, 32, I think she packed up three kids and moved from New York, Bronx, New York to Florida to start her life over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and just because there's a lot going on in our family, there had been several deaths and a lot of just horrible things kind of had happened, and so she was ready to go. She was already thinking about it, but then seeing like her youngest brother was shot and killed, and then like my great grandmother had a stroke because of that, and it was too much, and so and that's where like a lot of the really big challenges really started because I mean she's a 30 and I'm 34, so think about that for context. Like I'm a husband and I'm a father to two girls, you know, the sole provider for our family, and we're very much in a place where like we're okay, and to know that at this age, my mom was still trying to get on her feet. It's just a
Yeah.
you know, really wild thing to think about. So in those challenges, I wanted to be a lawyer, and but then we kind of got introduced to the church. And at that point, with our family being a low socioeconomic standpoint, um, the church actually really came alongside of our family and really helped my mom just with us and helping to like meet some provisions. And I'm a black kid from Bronx, New York, and there was this like white guy from North Carolina with his country accent. You know what I mean? Like, and like he just took me under his wing, just
Mm.
just loved on me. And I saw the impact that he had on teenagers, especially when we got really connected. I was coming out of a rough time. I actually went to jail at 16 because I got into a fight and got a battery charge.
Oof.
And that's when I first started dealing with like depression. And I remember at 17, I called him and I said, I had gathered a bunch of stuff and I said, if he doesn't answer the phone, because I kid you not, he sometimes can be harder to get a hold of than the president. And I said, if he doesn't answer the phone, I'm going to take my life. And he answered and he said, hey, buddy. I still remember him. Hey, buddy, how you doing? I'm like, I'm just about to take my life. And he said, what? Like, imagine getting that phone call and someone just opening up with that line. And he's like, what? And I
Wow.
said, you heard me. He said, stay on the phone. So he raced over to my house, and just grabbed me and hugged me. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. I was like, I'm just tired. I'm just tired. Um, and 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 seeing just the influence that he had on me and several of my peers, and I was like, yeah, I want to be able to have that impact on someone else. And so like, well, I'm gonna ditch law school idea. And I'm gonna go to Bible college so that I can be a youth pastor and so that I can go out and help kids. And that's exactly what I did. I did that and I finished school and I actually got to come back, and the church that I was at, his son had a church. And that's the church that I went to. And I was a youth pastor at that church in the inner city for about 5.5 years, doing a lot of the same things and just like walking with young men, young women, and with their families, and just being a good support system. And of course, all the spiritual things. And then after about 5.5 years, my lead pastor, who I was very, very, very close with, told me he was going to Texas to take another ministry there. So I told my wife, I'm like, I guess we're packing up and we're going to Texas. I mean, I'd follow him to the moon. And that's when he told me, well, actually, I'm not taking you with me. I'm going to recommend that you become the next lead pastor of this church. And so I was like, what? Because I never thought,
Wow.
again, my goal was I thought what I call a second man. I would just be a second man forever. I want to be able to love on the kids until I don't have the knees to run around with them or play basketball with them anymore or whatever. And then after that, like, I'll just support you in whatever you need. And that's always what I felt like I would do. But that's exactly what happened. He actually moved on to Texas and I became the interim pastor. So they kind of put me through um, like there's like a period where they're seeing like what your knowledge is like and do you align. And so I was on that for about 8 weeks, and then after 8 weeks there was a vote, and that vote voted me in to be the next pastor of the church.
Wow.
When I became the pa- so when I became the pastor of that church, man, it really began to just kind of like thrive. Like we is I guess like me being a young guy, I became the youngest one of the youngest lead pastors in Central Florida at the time. I was 27. They gave a 27-year-old kid a $2.2 million building.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
took all the deacons and trustees. I said, we're going to the bank. Why am I the
Mm.
CEO on this bank account? If I wasn't a
Yep.
good person, I would liquidate this place and I'd become
Mm.
a millionaire overnight. And so, like, get me off of all this stuff. I don't want to be on this stuff. I just want to do the work. And so we're there, and I immediately became an outreach kind of person because the church reached a low socioeconomic kid, and that was my mission. Aside from like the teaching and the preaching and those things and hospital visits, we do a lot of that stuff, and helping people with their needs or whatever. I wanted to give back to the community, and we did that. It wasn't long before we were able to. I remember standing outside. Someone sent me the picture actually probably a few months ago of me standing on the corner of the church with a bag of apples, just saying with a sign that says free food, free food. And then there are a couple people, if you're listening to this, the Roten, Cedric and Benita Roten, and they saw me doing this stuff, and they're like, man, this young guy, he cares about the community. Like, we're gonna come alongside and help him. And man, we hit the ground running. We got connected to some bigger organizations. It went from giving out a few apples and stuff from the leftover food at the food bank to giving out hundreds of pounds of food every week. We had to rent a U-Haul to be able to to be able to get it all. And then we got connected with a distribution center with Walmart and with Target and with Amazon. And so we were able to get a hold of appliances. I remember one person had a fire and they lost everything, and we refurnished their house just free,
Wow.
no cost, And so then we had some different initiatives that we were doing, and I had some city councilmen pushing permits through for me and state representatives who gave me their phone number. I mean, they saw a young guy who cared about the people, and it wasn't long before like we were just hitting the ground running. And so we're doing all of that stuff, and that's where I was. I was happy doing that, and I remember exactly where I was and what I was wearing. It was one day after food ministry was over for the day, and I'm picking up the signs we actually had cars that would line up on the street. Just we had to actually like remove areas of our property, right? Because it's a 9 acre property, and remove some of these areas so that cars could have somewhere to go, so that we wouldn't
Wow.
get the street shut down. It was just huge, and um, I was picking up the food signs for the day, and I thought we don't have a mental health center. The nearest one I remembered was, if I'm remembering correctly, was about 30 minutes, and we were reaching a low socioeconomic area. So a lot of people weren't going to be able to make it over there to that. And I was
Mm.
like, well, I want to bring that here. And so I was like, because at this point we had connected with some community liaisons as well. We had someone coming in from the city we became a hub for Medicaid for people who didn't have insurance, and diapers and formulas and wipes and WIC and toys. And we had a whole room, and it was just clothes and toys and diapers and wipes and formula. And we gave her a key, just bring people here and get them what they need. And so I wanted to be that hub. And
Mm.
I was like, well, we have the space. I want to build a mental health center, right here, a clinical mental health. You know what I'm saying? Just being able to equip people with their needs. And so I went to school. And because I come from a faith-based background, I went to Liberty University, where I got my master's in clinical mental health counseling. And about 2.5 years into that, I had a friend of mine who I actually just saw him on the way to my office just now. And he called me and said, "Hey, we know we went to undergrad together to that same Bible college." And he said, "We know that you're working on your mental health counseling degree. We're a larger ministry, so our ministry was very small. Their ministry is about 1,000 people, and they were like, we want to build a mental health counseling center here. Would you come and build that here?" And I was like, no, I have work to do in Orlando, but thank you for the offer. You know, and I shut that down. And it wasn't long. And I tell you what, I always tell people, like, if it wasn't for Steven, if you listen to this later, if it wasn't for Steven, I wouldn't be here, because he was persistent. And he was like, well, we want you to come. We want you to come. We want you to come. And sick he knew my mentors and sick my mentors on me. And after some time thinking about it and praying, talking about it with my wife, we decided to come. And now I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, right now at the church where we were coming to build the counseling center. While I was here, I still had about a month, a semester of internship to finish, and I got connected with a organization called Hartford Belair Community Mental Health Center, and it's not a faith-based organization at all. And so I was there to finish my internship. After I finished, they hired me. And while I was getting clinical supervision to build the center, which we did do. We're excited that it's doing very well. We're looking at taking those next steps now. But I was getting supervision while building the counseling center and still working at the mental health center. And that person, Dr. Tracy Hunt, if she sees this later, she became my mentor. And I finished up school and I was just focused on building the mental health center here and working at the intern at the clinic that they hired me on there to, and I was the first intern there in the company's 50 years, the first one. And then since then we've been able to see almost 30 interns come through. My job at the clinic is to work with master's level interns, counseling, social work, and their field work. And it's cool because several of them are now, one's a director at our organization, another one's an assistant director. Of course, I oversee internship operations there, and I see a small caseload of schizophrenic, schizoaffective, bipolar, psychotic. So a lot of the heavier stuff at the clinic.
Mm.
And so here is mostly worries and woes, stress, depression, anxiety, couples, family dynamics,
Hmm.
the grand majority of what's happening here. But over there, it's very much clinical, like a higher level clinical. And so doing those things. Well, I finished school, got my master's, excited, and then my mentor was like, "So what about your PhD?" And I'm like, "Lady, you're crazy. Like, you're crazy. I'm so glad. I'm so ready to be done with school." But I'm a big fan of whenever you allow someone to be your mentor, you seriously consider what they say, right?
Mm.
So I spent a weekend, I thought about it, talked about it with my wife, prayed about it, and by Monday I had applied to a school called the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And the reason why is much like, and the same reason I chose Liberty University is because I didn't want to have to move and relocate to another place. I wanted to still be able to do the work that I was doing and still get the education. So thank God for distance learning.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened. I was building the counseling center here. I was, building the counseling center here. I was working at the internship, working at the clinic over there. And so I did that and yeah, worked through all of those things. Back in January, I defended my dissertation. And then actually just last week is my degree got conferred and I walked. And so now it's
Yay.
all done. Now it's all done. There's nothing else. There's no more school. Now I have to just walk in it. And I love what I do. It's very fulfilling. Building the counseling center in a faith-based way, and then at the clinic where I get to just be like a clinical administrator, and just help. I'm a big fan of a big reason for it is because whenever I got my license, Maryland didn't even send me a certificate. They said, "Dear graduate, attached is your information. It expires in 2 years. See ya." And I'm like, "That's it?" Like there are so many things that need to happen. There are uh, strict limitations for new therapists. Like you didn't even make
Yeah.
sure I knew what I was doing. You know what I mean? You just
Yeah.
said, "Go to grace," and I hated how abandoned I felt. And
Mm.
I was telling my mentor, who was the director of the clinic, that I hated that, and that if it was up to me, nobody would deal with that again. And so that's what birthed the internship position at the clinic. Um,
Mm.
and I'm so glad she was able to hear my heart and see my vision for things. And so my desire is statewide reform on this issue. So Maryland, look out. That's kind of like if I can, the Cliff Notes version. There's some details here and there that I guess are big but non-pertinent, to answer your question. But that's the journey. I started
Yeah.
off as being a youth pastor, and all of a sudden, like I'm a clinical mental health therapist and oversee counseling operations for a couple of organizations. So it's been a
I
ride.
mean, I don't think you have enough letters after your name. You should probably get a second PhD and maybe do a postdoc as well.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. I think I might do that. That sounds
Yeah.
like a
No,
good.
it's honestly, so I grew up going to church and grew up being a Christian, and I was a counselor at a Christian apologetics and leadership camp for years, and I was a worship leader and all of those things. And so I have a lot of my own history there. But one thing that really strikes me about your story is your desire to really dig into the clinical side of counseling, because a lot of times when churches offer counseling, it's kind of someone in the church who many years ago may have gotten some kind of degree somewhere and was like, I can sit and listen to people and give them ideas.
Mhm.
So it's really encouraging to hear the how seriously you're taking the counseling in that position, and how you are helping to bring more people into that mindset, because I think that's something the that the church in general has been very uh people have used that against the church for a very long time, that they don't see mental health as a real issue and don't take it seriously, and so it's nice to see a church doing that.
Sure. And actually, one of the things that I do, which is we do these things called workshops. So instead of like a traditional like Wednesday night service, we have a traditional Wednesday night service, but we have workshops that run all year round on different topics. And so I've been privileged to do several workshops, long workshops, like 6 to 8 week workshops, and all geared around bridging mental health and the church. And so I did this series that was huge called Mind Games. We had 132 people at the first session, in called Mind Games, and it was an 8 week series on mental health in the church. We talked about, I would say, my pastor hat and my therapist hat, and so like here's what the Word of God says about depression. We talked about Elijah in 1 Kings 19, and we talked about family trauma. We talked about David and Bathsheba and Amnon and Tamar, and all of these, and anxiety from the Bible, Philippians 4, but then the DSM-5 talking about this is what GAD looks, generalized anxiety disorder and mute disorder and panic disorder. And so being able to say like, hey, I'm going to use like both the clinical and spirit and
Hmm.
biblical prowess, and show you that they're not as disaligned as you think they are.
Yeah.
Like maybe we can blame it on Sigmund Freud and his psychosexual stages, but that was a little weird. But other than that, I mean, I pride myself on the same thing, on trying to say like, hey, we don't want to dismiss the spiritual, but we don't want to dismiss the clinical either. Let's see
Hmm.
what happens when we marry the two.
Well,
And
and it's important to remember both of them, because as someone who is very keen on learning history and understanding medicine and how people's minds worked in the past, they just didn't have the words to explain certain things, and so they expressed them in the ways that they understood, that they felt they could get other people around them to understand, but it doesn't necessarily sound the way that we explain things nowadays. It doesn't mean they're different things, and that people 2000, 3000, 4000 years ago weren't dealing with the exact same things that we're dealing with. It just means that we now have a vocabulary that allows us to express the issues that we're dealing with and handle them in better ways.
absolutely agreed, 100%.
So talking about your dissertation specifically, something I found really interesting was the talking about the identity development within the program and figuring out your specialization and figuring out who you are within counseling, within mental health counseling. And it's something that I see being brought up over and over and over again, in especially in PhD programs, of PhD students realizing that the degree doesn't set you up for anything after the degree. It's just like, here, you're doing the degree and now life stops, doesn't it? Like, why would you want to do something with this?
Right.
So it's really encouraging to see people realizing, oh, we need to have these conversations. Oh, we need to look into how to use the knowledge that we're gaining and use the research in real life applications, but then also how people find themselves within that research and specialize further. Could you talk to me a little bit more about what that looked like in your research?
Mhm. Yeah. So when we talk about counseling specifically, and I guess I would say it's transferable, but counseling specifically, we do we use a term called the minimally prepared counselor, and so the KCREP is the accrediting body for clinical mental health counseling, and their job, what they profess to do, nothing more, is just we want to get you into the door. We want to give you all the we want to give you some theory, we want to give you some training and teach you how to sit with your client so you can go out and do that. And what you'll find is that that is not a bad thing, but the research shows that the individual won't want to stay there long, right? And so if they're not going to want to stay there long, and there's a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons is because they begin to find things that they like to do and want to walk that out, or they're pushed into an environment. It's almost like a one size fits all hat. Like it doesn't work that way. And you can only use cognitive behavioral therapy so much, you know what I'm saying, before like some that doesn't quite, it works with most modalities, but it won't work for everything. And so every person that I interviewed ended up saying they needed a niche. They pursued a niche, or they were pushed into a niche, and being a generalist began to no longer serve them. The overarching issue was that there are no practical steps on how to pursue a specialty. Well, KCREP says that we're not preparing you for specialization. The research actually showed that the profession across the country is not even unified in its standards. You know what I mean? So there was one individual, I think I actually sent you the article, where he was saying that he was actually against specialization because it would further fragment the profession because we aren't even unified. Like in Florida, you're called a licensed mental health counselor. In Maryland, you're called a clinical mental health a licensed clinical professional counselor. In some other states, you're called a licensed professional counselor. And what you need, how many hours you need for that differs. And so there's a counseling compact that's actually underway right now. I
Mm.
think some 30 something states have signed it. And the goal is to unify it, right? We want the same standards like across the board. So I'm a huge fan of it. I'm not some states are not so fond of it, but it's a work in progress. But so we want you to be a generalist, but when we're not staying generalists. And so if people are pursuing specializations or are considering themselves specialists, how are you getting there? So the first part of the research, the literature review, showed that like the major gaps in the literature is that specialization exists, but we don't know how to get there. Specializations exist, but we're not creating steps to get there. And we're not seeing what supervision in the postgraduate experience even looks like. Because once you get licensed, you still have to have, across every state, you still need to have a certain level of supervised experience before you can
Mm.
practice independently, but there's no research on what that looks like and how that contributes to moving further. It exists, people are doing it, stuff's happening, but we don't know because there's no streamlined approach to it. And so that's what I sought to find clarification on. And that's where like it started to lead me in my findings. And so that was super cool to like see like, all right, then what's happening in the postgraduate experience. So
Well, it seems wild to expect a counselor to stay a generalist because we wouldn't expect that from many other professions.
Mm.
Like you wouldn't expect a surgeon to be able to treat every kind of surgery. Like you, I could, I can assume that if you're going to be a generalist counselor, it would get overwhelming very quickly because you're treating such a wide gamut of issues that you wouldn't be able to really help everyone fully in the way that you want to be able to. So niches are important not only to pare down the time that you're spending researching in your off hours, but to make sure that the people are getting the help that they need as accurately as possible.
yeah, absolutely. And you nailed it. And what do you think happens when you try to be a generalist for everyone? What's the inevitable result? Burnout,
Yeah.
right? And that was a constant theme through the interviews of trying to be all things to all men, like really wasn't sustain. That kept happening all the time. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. And so we can try. And I think there's something. I think there. I will say like. I don't knock K-Crep because K-Crep is doing what they said that they were going to do. We never said we were going to create people. We just want you to get to the place where now resources are available. There are resources
Mhm.
that are available. And I'm not even saying that K-Crep is responsible to make sure that everyone knows what to do and where to go. I'm just saying that there's a problem where like people being a generalist is unsustainable. You're gonna naturally lean toward a niche or being pushed towards something, or you're gonna burn out.
Yeah.
And every single person that I interviewed, all of them said the exact same thing. All of them, 100%.
Well, in talking about this subject being transferable, I mean, there's so many people. I haven't gotten my PhD yet, but in my master's, I remember finishing it and finishing my thesis and leaving, and then having to prepare my PhD proposal because I want to go to PhD programs in Europe or the UK, and you have to do a full proposal to apply. It's not the same in the US where you would have a year or two or three of coursework, then you do your proposal and then you write. So you're just on your own to write that proposal. And I was very lucky in that my master's advisor was willing to supervise that proposal process and read it over and give me ideas and question me on things and show me where I should be filling in gaps in my reasonings.
Yeah,
um but most people don't get that unless they have a really really kind supervisor. So at every level you're dealing with an academic structure that isn't preparing students for life after. It's
yeah,
just academia is for academia and that's it.
yeah,
Which is probably why you get so many people stuck in academia who want to do other things and feel like they can't
yeah.
leave academia because they haven't been prepared for it. Then there are those freaks like me who are just like, please never make me leave a school. But for those who want to, there aren't any preparations. It's just you're prepared to do school. It's like
For sure,
preparing for the SAT. You know how to do the SAT. Those
yeah,
skills are not transferable to real life.
for sure. Agreed, wholeheartedly. Yeah.
So like I'm wondering what are some ideas for how we could better prepare and how we can make sure those resources are available to people.
Hmm. And so something that I think so the research yielded five themes, right? And the first theme was the supervisory relationship, and what we find out is a lot like what you said. New clinicians entering the profession needed some kind of foundation to stand on. And that's where I talked about like the expectation for supervision was not just general oversight, but mentorship, right? They wanted someone who was further along, much like your professor in your master's thesis, after your master's thesis, preparing you for your proposal. They wanted someone that can say, "Hey, you've done this. Can you help me? Can you guide me?" And that whenever that structure broke down, everything else fell apart because like no one else. So the second theme was that whenever the structural breakdowns happened, theme two was that there was a breakdown in the confidence competence loop, right? They would feel they wouldn't have confidence because they weren't confident, they wouldn't be able to invest in trust in their skills, and they weren't able to develop, and so not developing ultimately makes you incompetent, right? And so now you can't perform the way that you need to perform, and that would affect your confidence. So they got stuck in that loop and they weren't able to move forward. So now you're seeing that the external structural breakdown caused intrinsic challenges, right? And so after they were stuck in that loop, people were getting out of it by relying on the third theme, their passion and calling, right? They're like, well, I'm gonna stick to. I actually sang it in my dissertation defense. No, 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 stick to the stuff you know. It's like High School
Yeah.
Musical. You know what I
Yep.
mean? But that was the truth. They were like, well, I know when I wanted to work with this population and do this thing, so I'm going to just rely on what I loved and what I wanted to do, so that because I don't know anything else, I don't know where else to go. But then that yielded the fourth challenge, which is the cultural community context. What would happen is now they're like, well, I'm not getting the support that I need, so I'm going to do what I know. But then the where they were at, the culture, the community, the challenges of the day were pushing against their passion and calling. If it aligned, if you were in a trauma center and your passion was trauma, well then you were great. But
Yeah.
if you were wanting to work with, I don't know, geriatric community suffering from schizophrenia, you know what I'm saying? But you ended up getting stuck at a woman's counseling crisis center for people who are going through domestic violence. Well, now the needs of the agency are pushing against what you want to do for a passion. So you tried to reroute the structural breakdowns that happen in your life, and then the context of your community pushed against that and effectively pushing you back down to like, I'm not sure what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now you're trying to just kind of fall in line. And then, but then the fifth theme was structural barriers. Felt like people were saying, someone said this one time, they said, it felt like I was getting thrown into a cage to fight a bear with both hands tied behind my back. Right? Someone said this, like, the resources were horrible. Like, oh, here's this resource that you can do. But here's the thing, as a clinical mental health counselor, the resources for credentialing and experience don't count until you're fully licensed, right? If I want to become autism spectrum certified, I cannot do that as an entry counselor. I have to fulfill all of the counseling requirements in Maryland, all 3,000 hours and 100 hours of supervision over a course of 3 years. And then once I become a licensed clinical professional counselor, then I can get the credentials to do X, Y, and Z. So people were like, I can't even participate in this thing because it's not for me. So like you're seeing that there was that gap.
Mhm.
And so they were like, the resources weren't good. They weren't getting good advice. And people would be like, I'll point you in the right direction, but go in grace. And it's like, dang, can someone like show me what now? In the beginning, it was like I wasn't being supported. On the other end, by theme five, it's like, well, there's there's not even the resources out there for me to do it myself.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so it's just kind of like so keeping us stuck. You know what I mean? And so I propose that the answer for it is going back to theme one, and it's mentorship style supervisor. I mentioned Dr. Tracy Hunt, who's my mentor, and she has paved so many ways for me. I remember I was working on a play therapy certification. And she's like, "Do you plan to be a child therapist?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "So why are you wasting your time?" And I was like, uh, heard, you know what I'm saying? I'm just like, because as a generalist, I'm
Yeah.
thinking I need to learn a little bit of this, learn a little bit of that. She said, no, don't do that. That's not sustainable. You don't even want to work with
Mm.
kids. And I don't work with kids. I have like two on my caseload. You know what I mean? So like there's not
Mhm.
much. And they're like teenagers. And so being able to like, look at those different components. And so having someone who was willing to like walk alongside you and say like beyond supervision, I want to do life with you, which is funny because it mirrors biblical discipleship. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? It's having someone to walk life with you, and at different steps and at different stages. And I think that is someone to walk alongside you and help you to hone those skills and help you to say, like you said, like you had that professor who was like, all right, this is what you should have in the proposal. You shouldn't have that. Remove that. That's too wordy. And it's funny because at my proposal, I actually failed my proposal defense. I failed my proposal defense, which is crazy because I was ahead of the rest of my cohort at the time. I had a dissertation coach who was like, "Here's how we get ahead," and did it,
Mhm.
and then me and my dissertation chair just butt heads. Like
Yeah.
I just couldn't please her. I just could not please her, and it ultimately led to me failing my proposal. But what's interesting is that I was gonna quit, and then my advisor was like, "You came too far. Quitting isn't an option. Absolutely not." So now that that's out of the way, how are we gonna proceed? And I was like, "I think I need a new committee." So I actually fired my entire committee, all three people. And
Wow.
I actually went back later, a couple of days later, and asked my advisor. I was like, "Would you actually?" Because he was in my department. So would you actually be my chair? Would you chair my research? And he said, "Yeah, but I need you to know that when I tell you something, it's not a suggestion. You know what I'm saying? It's not a suggestion. You do what I need you to do, and you're gonna be okay." And I did. He said jump. I said how high. You know what I mean? And but that's and what's funny is that I'm looking back, and my former chair, she was the antithesis to that. She was like, "It's your research. You do it." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're marking me up and down." You know what I'm saying? And not giving me the information or the resources that I need in order to be effective. I've never written a
Yeah.
dissertation before, so I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. Help me. Gosh, help me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
she just she would say that this is wrong. You need to restructure this. My love, how do I do that? You know what I mean? How do I do that? And so he would come back and he'd be like, that's too wordy. You know what I'm saying? Consolidate it by thinking about this lens, or that doesn't belong here. Remove that entire paragraph. Or you know what I'm saying? And so he wasn't doing it for me, but he was kind of like almost like a little duck. Like, all right, back over here, little duck. Oh, back over here, little duck. So I was able to. I still did it myself. It took me 23 hours to write my chapter 4 and chapter 5. I wrote them all myself. No one wrote them for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But being able to walk out the kinks and some of
Hmm.
those components, like he embodied to me that mentorship style. He's like, all right, Xavier, I looked over your dissertation and chapter 2, you had this area here. I think it belongs better in chapter 3. I moved it to chapter 3. Like, you know what I mean? And I ultimately went back to proposal, pass, no revisions. Went to my dissertation defense, pass, no revisions. Like I literally did not have to open the document again. I sent it right to publishing. You know what I mean? We walked through the
Yeah.
grammar stuff and whatever. But like ultimately, that mentorship style supervision model is what I think is the key.
Yeah.
Transferably across disciplines. Like if we can embody walking along, but think about this: the medical degrees they do that.
Hmm.
Residents, I'm not sure if you're a TV show person, but my wife and I we were watching the show The Pit. Have you seen the show The Pit?
I haven't seen The Pit, but I have seen most of Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But like the residents
I've
they
seen the
follow
fake
around.
version.
Right. That's it. Heard. And they follow around the attending and they they
Hmm.
they they do this and they watch them perform open heart surgery, you know what I'm saying, and say, "Oh,
Yeah.
what do we do with this carotid artery?" and whatever. And I love that walking alongside them in it. And so I
Mm.
think that's the cure.
It's wild to me that so many professions have just dropped apprenticeships and mentorships and actual internships altogether. Like it when you think of an internship now, it's generally you're there to do grunt work and you're not paid and you're just a guinea pig for them to do what they don't want to do.
Get my
When
coffee.
in reality, it's supposed to be that place where you're learning alongside them and you're shadowing them and you're learning the ins and the outs of your career or what you hope is your career. And that's a tradition, like you were saying, that goes back thousands of years of having. I mean, there were times when the mentor mentee thing, we shouldn't really go too much into detail about what that really meant, but
Mhm.
um the concept of just learning on the job and getting your hands dirty doing it with someone who's been doing it for a long period of time, we've gotten so bogged down in the authoritarian version of education that, oh, we tell you what to do and then you just go out and do it, be an individual, do it yourself, figure it out. There are some times where that works,
Mhm.
but most of the time you're not going to you're not going to know even where to start. I mean, the number of people who it's a cliche at this point, who online are like, "Oh, I do my own research."
Mhm.
It's easy to say that when you don't know how to research, and people don't understand that they don't know how to research because we're not exemplifying it for them.
Right.
We're just saying, "Oh, you just go read a bunch of stuff." When in reality, it's sitting down, you're taking notes, you're combing through, okay, who paid for the study, who did the study, what university was the study through, like what are the obvious reasons why this study was done. And so it's I agree that it's so frustrating that we're just kind of thrown to the wolves, and the main answer whenever you ask a question past a certain level, you ask a question, they're just like, "Well, figure it out. You're an adult. You can figure it
Right.
out for yourself." And that doesn't work. There's no situation where that works except maybe survivalism. But even then, you're going to eat a bad plant and die.
Right.
Like, so
Agreed.
like humans are not programmed to live in a silo. We're
Agreed.
programmed for community. We're programmed to learn from each other. And it's crazy that our academic system is not functioning in that way.
Right. And I actually also the second thing I would say was that I proposed at the end of the dissertation was that we should streamline the field work experience, the internship experience. Mental health counselors have to go through a practicum and 2 internships. Why not streamline it? What are your interests? You like child and
Mm-hmm.
adolescent therapy? Why don't we get you connected with a child and adolescent heavy At least for your practicum, the first 14 weeks. You don't like it, internship one, we can switch you to somewhere else. But I mean, that's what doctors
Mhm.
do. They do a match, right? They do a
Yeah.
match and see like if and streamline the process. They're streamlined. You're a medical doctor, you graduated, congratulations. But whether you want to go into medicine or psychiatry or neurosurgery or whatever it might be, I know that there's a matching system that has to happen. It doesn't
Mm.
guarantee, but still the premise is specialization. And so I proposed that. I'm like, why not streamline the fieldwork experience? But again, it comes with that level of intentionality that I think it would require extra work for people to do, and they don't want to do it. We want you to come in and have this experience without training you to do the experience. So
Well, and I wonder if there's also an element, and I mean, this is me posing a question as a statement. But I wonder if there's an element of mental health is still not being taken as seriously as physical health.
Mhm.
And so when you propose doing things in the same way that physical health doctors do things,
Yeah.
people don't see the point because mental health is just you're just sitting on a couch. You're just talking to someone sitting on a couch. Why would you need to go through a whole matching system? Why do we have to take it so seriously that way? So
Yeah.
I I don't know. I'm just that's me blowing some hot air, but it seems like that could also be part of it because that's something that I deal with in my area of research as well. I mean, being in sociology, we're considered a soft science at best. Like the humanities are not thought of very highly in society. And so whenever you propose something that seems a little bit more uh clinical in its approach, people are always
Yeah.
like, but why would you take it that seriously? Like there's always that little bit of a twinkle in their eye of just like, isn't that cute?
Well, the issue is that we're responsible for our own profession. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like it's not me going to, Johns Hopkins University and say, let me present this proposal to take mental health more seriously. It's it's the mental health leadership that oversee the profession that ultimately can affect this change. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
we don't have to go outside of our profession to do it. The universities can adopt that. They can adopt a more streamlined profession. Someone can start that. They don't need they don't need, it just requires on whether we want to be intentional enough. I think when it comes down to the profession of the whole is we're still trying to, I think it's not a priority because we still aren't all on the same page. I think
Yeah.
once we're all on the same page, doctors across the country have a match day
Mm.
across the country. Doctors
Yeah.
across the country are going to go to a residency. Nurses across the country will have to take the NCLEX. You know what I'm saying? They're going to have to. That's a nationwide test that every nurse that has to take. You know what I mean? And but in America, when it comes to mental health, we have the NCMHCE, we have the NCE, and every state is different on which test you can take. Why don't we pick one? Why don't we pick one and make everyone take the exact same test and make everyone have to do the exact same hours and the exact same amount of supervision? Like being able to be unified, but of course, with power and corruption, people don't want to be on the same page because I want to do my own thing. I want to do it my own way. And we're realizing that we're hurting the profession. I think if we're able to iron that out, I think the next step toward a streamlined path with someone overseeing that path becomes a natural, logical next step. We have to get out of our own way first. So we could very easily blame society's approach on mental health, but the truth is we're not taking it as seriously as we want to because we want it done our way. We want our cake and we want to eat it too. And so there's no one to blame but ourselves.
Ain't that always the way? So where do you see this research going? Do you see yourself continuing any of this research and using it to create some of those systems? Do you think that you're going to pivot? Where to now?
Oh, baby, I'm going for the top. I'm my
President,
goal,
perfect.
yes, my goal is to get on the board of institutions like KCREP, which is responsible, the accrediting body that's responsible for the way that clinical mental health counseling is approached. I'd like to eventually write a proposal for them to consider, is there room, and I actually said that for my further research, is there room in KCREP's standards to make way for a streamlined path?
Mhm.
And so the American Counseling Association, I'd like to get on the board with them too. I actually just talked to someone who was in close connection with those agencies and asked if he'd be willing to mentor me as I walk toward a path toward trying to get a hold of get on those boards to be able to affect some meaningful change. I have statewide reform on my list of things to get done. So I have a 10-year plan. And
Nice.
on the beginning, I'm actually going to be presenting at a conference in June some of the findings from my research to kind of start getting that conversation kind of out there. And so I have a plan, but then again, I don't know the right path to get into some of those spaces. And so trying to
Mm.
connect with someone who will be willing to say, all right, I want to, I see your vision, I see what you want to do, and I have some strings that I can pull or some direction that I can give you on how to, like, what are the tangible steps in order for you to get this done. But my goal is that within 10 years, I want to be on one of, if not both of those boards, and seeing if I can do like a work, because I think I'm already doing the work on the ground. At the
Hmm.
internship coordination, I get to help train counselors to be the best version of themselves and say, you have options. Let's find what options fit best for you. But I want to be able to work from the top down component as well. So my mission is to see this all the way through, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, that's the part that most people balk at is the like you were talking about earlier, the confidence to say, yeah, I can actually do that. That is a position that I can see myself doing. So, I mean, congratulations on getting yourself to that point. I'm still at the place in my life where I'm like, okay, I want to do the PhD. I've applied. Am I really actually that smart that I can do a PhD? It's not saying I'm dumb, but just like the buyer's remorse of, oh no, is this really it? Like, where I think all of us are somewhere along that spectrum, and at some point you just have to kind of swallow the big pill and just go with it and say, okay, we're it's time to step that foot forward and just move for it. Like, it's
For sure.
hard to dream.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, going back to that, those research findings, my heart broke for the people that I was talking to in this in these interviews, because the five themes that were yielded were not my experience. I had
Mm,
I had a great supervisory relationship who would mentor me and guide me and walk me through. And because of that, I didn't have competence, confidence issues. I think I'm a very sound counselor. I think I'm a very effective counselor. I'm not the best counselor in the world, but I think I'm extremely effective for my level. I think
mhm,
and that showed in the reviews that have been left for me, having a strong therapeutic alliance with my clients, having an extremely low turnover rate, and clients who are leaving because they are disgruntled with what they're getting versus achieving their goals. Like, and so because of that, and now the third theme, I get to walk out my passion and calling. I just got a massive raise at the clinic, massive raise after getting my PhD, massive raise. And what
mhm,
she said three things. I want to congratulate you on a job well done, on getting your PhD. Number two, because half the organization right now are interns that came through my program. And then number three, I want you to have the comfort to be able to do the things that you want to do, to pursue your passions, to pursue
mm,
your callings. And so that happens. And so the cultural community context, I'm unfazed by. Why? Because I get to operate in it the way that I want to, and then I have no structural barriers. I get to walk out what I need to walk out because I have a village around me who are helping me to achieve that, which is fundamentally not the experience of the grand majority of the populace. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so when you talked about, man, to get to that confidence, I wish I could say that, man. I was always this Superman-esque kind of person. There was a lot of moments of like, what the heck am I doing here? And it's like, keep your eyes on the prize. Keep your eyes on the prize. You're not by yourself in this. And so being able to have that powerful support system that even carried me through failing proposal, and that sending me into depression and going to therapy and bitterness and trying to overcome it, and crying at graduation because I watched the rest of my cohort graduate without me. And I'm saying, all of those individuals to now having no revisions and graduating with a 4.0, and all of these other things.
Mhm,
But like, my village carried me through that. You know what I mean? So that's a huge component of it. And I would say, for anyone going into a PhD program, get someone who knows you, loves you, has your best interests at heart, and let them walk with you through the process. I think it changes that narrative, and it makes those five findings inevitably of non-effect, because
Yeah.
like the only reason those other four themes yielded was because there was a breakdown on theme one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if theme one is operating the way that it's supposed to, I think that the experience, I think I'm living proof of that, is fundamentally better. I mean, it's just like open door, open door, open door,
Hmm.
open door, open door, because someone's trailblazing that for me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I remember saying to my mentor, like, it's my mission to pay this forward, and that's why I'm going all the way to the top, because I know what it's like to have felt abandoned or lost or not knowing what direction to have. And I don't want anybody else to experience that. So it's not just for me, it's for us. So that's the mission.
Well, and that's the I feel like there are so many times where we talk about networking and people just kind of uh, like sneer at networking and are like, "Oh, you're gonna go network, aren't you?" Or like, "Oh, it's a networking event. Isn't that nice?" But that's what networking is, and what it should be. It's not going and greasing palms and being like, "Hey, I can do this for you if you can do this for me." That's not actual networking. Networking is getting to know people, understanding what their needs are. Hey, I have something that could help with that. Let's
Mhm.
work together. It's not this weird transactional thing. It's a relationship that you build,
Yeah.
like you were just talking about, and that's what opens doors. I feel like so often people are squeamish of asking for things from people that they know could get them things.
Right.
um Even in my own life, I often am worried that, like, oh, if I ask this friend for something, they're going to think I'm only in the friendship for this, and no one ever thinks that.
Hmm.
So that's the purpose. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for those relationships where you can both edify each other, and that person who is further ahead of you on the path is able to pull you up with them, because they want to, and because they see that potential in you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say, like, I want to be able to be a resource. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be a resource. Just somebody that's connected to the church, and her daughter just graduated her bachelor's and is studying a master's in counseling at her school. And I said, when she's ready for an internship, tell her to call me. Like, to be able to have that ability to kind of like open that door, like for her to know that like you don't have to worry about it. Whenever you're ready, there's options for you, and being able to provide that experience for people. And so it's funny because it continues that village mentality. It's not scratch my back so I can scratch yours. It's like I have this ability and you have this ability, and there's a mutual beneficial engagement that we have. I tell my clients all the time, working in outpatient community mental health is going to put you head and shoulders against your peers, head and shoulders over
Mm-hmm.
your peers. We're going to make sure that you're equipped to do the job. You know what I'm saying? And I know that having someone like me for them is a massive win for them. And they come back and tell me in class, they were like, "Oh my gosh, you saw what? You had to emergency petition someone and send them to the hospital. Someone said they saw a pink penguin in the room with you, and that was you know what I'm saying? Like, they have experiences that they may not have gotten, otherwise.
Yeah.
So to be able to afford someone an experience is a massive
Mm-hmm.
deal. You know what I mean? And so, but the truth is, that's the same thing that was done for me. And
Yeah.
and and I'm going to continue to be a resource to better our society the best that I can anyway. I know I'm just one guy, but I'll do the best I can.
And I think that's something that we're going to start seeing a lot more as our generation gets older. Because millennials, and I don't mean to put generations against each other, it's just because I have the experience of being a millennial, that I see the things that we've had to deal with in the world, not just individually, but just as a generation, the things that we've had to deal with. We are used to having to work on no hope. And so as we see people behind us who need things, we're like, wait, I know where that came from. Let me go get that for you. Or here, I'll show you how to write that thing because I had to figure it out on my own. It was the hardest thing ever. So I think we're just, it's exciting seeing our generation grow up and come into those positions of where we can be empathetic, and those positions where we can be compassionate and help people, because those were places where we didn't necessarily find it ourselves. So now we're able to kind of turn that around and be that to people.
Absolutely. Agreed. Wholeheartedly. Agreed.
On that note, let's move right on through to the synthesis questions. Da, da, da. So, this is a series of questions that I ask all of my guests. If I ever miss a guest, I will have to force them to come back on because I would feel bad.
Mhm.
So, question number one: what is your typical executive dysfunction and or rest day activity? Like, how do you get yourself recharged?
Oh, oh. Okay, so I'm a gym rat. I'm a gym rat. I used to power lift. One of my big goals. So, and real quick story, when in 2014, I was training to power lift a competition. I was 167 pounds. I had a 317 deadlift at the time, a 350-pound squat, and a 265-pound bench press. So I'm a little guy. I'm an ectomorph, nice and small. And I broke my leg wrestling in my dorm room with my friend, right?
Oh,
And that shut that down for me indefinitely. Well, then 2 years ago, I was able to match that. I hit a 375-pound deadlift. And then like I matched my 350 squat and then my bench was around the same. But it was cool to see like that 33-year-old me was able to match 23-year-old me. And so I love the gym. I go in, I listen to a book, a podcast, I listen to some music, I talk on the phone, you know what I mean? I'll go in there. And so I love that. I'm falling in love with PS5 again. Of course, being in grad school, there was not much time, and not only that, but I'm a husband, I'm a father to two young girls, and so finding that time can be pretty tough. So we started going to the YMCA as a family, and so that
nice.
has been a huge deal. Whenever we do have a free night, because we still do have church and some other things that's happening throughout the week, I'll hop on the PlayStation or I'll pick up my guitar and play some guitar a little bit or whatever. So I kind of the gym is like my main thing, and then watching shows with my wife. Right now all of our shows are ended, so we're scrambling to figure it out. It's probably going to be The Office until something comes back.
That's fair.
But we or Parks and Rec or New Girl, but we
Yes.
that's what I like
Ooh,
to
good
do is like we
choices.
like to yeah, great shows. It's funny, I actually have all those sets in the plastic DVD cases because the way that our world's going, we may not have streaming services forever. I'll have the
Yep.
DVDs, you know what I mean, and the Blu-rays. And so super excited. So the gym is a big one for
Yeah.
me. And then other things I just kind of get in where I fit in.
People always make fun of me because I listen to podcasts and audiobooks at the gym. Like
Mhm.
I listen to my like hardcore sociology kind of
Yeah,
books at the gym. And I'm like, it's the only place I can focus. It forces me to focus.
for sure.
Uh,
Agree.
Next question is, what is your favorite setting for working on your research?
Oh, the clinic is definitely it because I get to see it in real time. We are not taking interns at the church just yet. I have to move through a couple things. It's almost like the church is like a Target, and the counseling center is like the bike rack in the back of the Target. You know what I'm saying? So I have to fight, not fight, but I mean, there's a lot of irons in the fire. We have a lot, and we're
Yeah.
a large ministry. We average about 1,200, 1,300 a week. You know, we have a 14-piece pastoral staff because we have so many different areas. And then we have a Christian school with another 1,000 kids in it. So there's a lot of areas that require, we have three campuses. And so there's a lot of things that need attention. So unfortunately, we don't get to move as fast as I'd like. But the clinic, it's not a bike shop. It's a bike shop. Like you can get a Huffy, you can get a mountain bike, you can get a speed racing bike, you can do all of the, you can buy a motorcycle. You know what I mean? Like and everyone there is a bike expert. So being able to do that at the clinic is like the way where I can really see things walk out. Is where the most opportunities have come from. Now I have my higher education connections that I'm just starting to tap into. LinkedIn, something I never really paid much attention to because I thought it was a waste of time and just a measuring contest, is actually has proven to be otherwise in this
Mhm.
in this role, and getting connected with some higher level people, not for transactional relationship, but again for resource connectivity. And so I'm feeling that out, but mostly it's going to be in the clinical setting where I get to pour into new clinicians every single day.
Mm.
So that's my jam.
What is one thing an advisor has told you that has stuck with you? And this could be good or bad.
She said, I was crying because I failed proposal and I was falling apart. She said, Xavier, this is not your life's work. It's the door. It's the door. And that changed my life because coming from a low socioeconomic background, I became an overachiever very fast, right? I play 5 instruments, right? I speak 2 languages, and I'm learning Japanese at the moment. Like I got a 3.5 in my master's and a 4.0 in my PhD. Like I'm used to just high performance. You know, when my
Mhm.
director slid that paper across the desk and showed me that our numbers are up for the quarter because my interns are killing it, I was like, yeah, you know, that's what I'm like. And so for someone to slow me down and be like, you don't have to do that to yourself. You
Mhm.
live by that sword, you'll die by that sword. It fundamentally changed my outlook on achievement. And I still have taken, I was able to take that pressure off myself and say, whatever will be, will be. You know, do my best and let the rest play out. And so her saying that this is not your life work, you just have to pass. The best dissertation is a finished dissertation. You know,
Yeah.
you still want to be good, you still want to be effective, you don't want to be lazy or produce something, especially it's a public work. I got a letter from the Library of Congress. You don't want people just looking that up and being like, ew, what was that crap? You know what I'm saying? But like, it's not like the end all be all. She's like, you're gonna write many more things
Hmm.
after this. And so just go in there and get it done. And I loved that. And I would say that was some of the best advice I've ever gotten.
Ultimately, it's an academic document.
Yep.
It's not something that's going to be at a Barnes and Noble.
Yep. And someone's gonna come after me and surpass. I'm currently the expert on the topic, but I won't be that forever.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna come after me and pass that, and and next thing you know, I'm gonna be 10-year-old outdated research. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, what's the point? Go do more. Go and
Yep.
continue to give to the profession, contribute to the higher body of knowledge. So, for sure.
If you could choose any other research, what would you choose and why?
Oh, if I could choose any other research, what would I choose and why? I think I have a couple of ideas. I had an idea for looking at addictions counseling as a counselor killer.
Ooh.
I'm still going to pursue that research. My chair was actually an addictions counselor, and in his pre professorship, and so we're looking at coming together. We talked about coming together and writing an article about whether to see if that phenomenon is true. But I have several friends of mine who did addictions counseling in their master's program, and when they finished, they graduated and left the profession because they were
Mm.
burnt out. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of different things on addictions counseling that I think, you know, we don't have time for today, but that was a big thing. The second one is barriers to academic success for Black men who come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And I probably would have looked at those things, but I was fresh into being a counselor when I started. I was so pissed off that the Maryland just kind of said, here you go in grace. And I was like, I don't like that feeling. I don't want anyone else to feel
Hmm.
it. That's my direct sphere of influence right now. And so I'm going back for the other two. But I was happy. I think this is where I landed because it was personal. So
Yeah. Sometimes you need that.
for sure.
Who is one other academic whose research you really admire?
Oh my gosh. Dr. Tracy Hunt. Again, people are gonna be so tired of hearing her name. That's my girl. She did her dissertation on spirituality and the role of spirituality and connectivity in the supervisory relationship. I actually looked a lot into her dissertation as I was preparing for the supervision component of mine and others, but I love what she was doing. But again, I know that her relationship with me was a direct impact on some of her research as well,
Mm.
and vice versa. And so I'm still looking into um, getting connected with some other works now that like I'm not just doing the work now that I'm contributing to a higher body of knowledge. I am new to that area, so I don't have a long list of individuals right now. But I am getting heavily into like exploring other research and seeing some great minds that are out there. And so maybe ask me again in a year, and I'll have some better answers for you.
That's how it always goes, though. You because you're studying a very niche thing, you get very familiar with like five people, and then you leave and you're like, wait, there's hundreds of people that I should know about. How do I not know these?
Yeah.
What is a question you've never been able to answer?
Oh, deep and existential. What is a question that I've never been able to answer? I would say those uh why can't we just band together? You know what I mean? Like I was having this conversation with my mentor just yesterday, and about like we would be able to do such great work if everyone wasn't having a measuring contest all the time and egos and power trips. And it's like, why can't we just like we would be so much better, not even just as a profession, but as a people. I sound like a Miss America contestant, but like I mean it. Like I just
Yeah.
like when you see that the barriers that many of us walk through are self-inflicted, I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, why can't we just be not be a crab in a bucket and just like walk alongside of each other? Even as we were walking out an issue in the clinic yesterday, like one of the therapists saying to the care team, like, "Hey, this is something I think we should do. This individual needs this," and the other person, a part of the care team, was like, "No, we're not doing that." Da, 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 da. I'm like, why? Why? Just for you to go all the way up and it be the same result? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thing. I was like, why can't we just band together, for the common good? But I know that
Yeah.
answer. So, I know that answer, but like I'm not settled with that answer. I know it's
Yeah.
pride, it's ego, it's agenda, it's all of those other things. But like I don't know that I haven't been able to settle on like what's those underlying factors that can't like those corridors won't connect, and I don't understand why that, especially in the counseling profession. But I don't
That's
know.
something that always makes me mad too. And I'm sure people listening to this podcast are tired of me talking about, but just when you take humans into context and how many
Yeah,
millions of years our species has existed, and yet we think we're so special that conceding a point to someone is
right.
beyond our capacity.
Yeah. The
Oof.
ego, man. Ego
Yeah.
is a hell of a drug, dude. Like
Yeah.
egos aside, we'd be so much more productive.
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
digress. Human
And
condition.
then the last question, what font do you wish you could present your research in?
What font? So I love script.
Ooh.
I love script. When I was in 11th grade, I got told I have ugly boy handwriting, and it hurt my feelings. And so now my print is detestable, but I have gorgeous cursive. And so if I could pick a font, it would probably be script or something like it.
Mhm.
But there's someone like Sans is a good one as well. But Times New Roman and Courier are fine, I guess. But like script would probably be the one that I would pick. You said fonts, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fonts. Okay, just making
Yeah,
sure I
yeah.
wasn't. Choose
And
script.
then where
Reading
can
cursive.
people find you online? How can they support you online?
Oh my gosh, my favorite question ever. And so for the people who are part of the church and are trying to figure out how to marry the two, I have a podcast called the Martian Talk podcast. It's available on every streaming platform. My Mind Game series is there that I talked about. Mind Games 2 is on there. I to Us, Thinking for Everyone, a workshop on relational building. I have lots of systemic theology, apologetics. We're about to wrap up an apologetics series. We're getting ready to go into a biblical ethics series here in a couple weeks, and so a lot of like mental health and like a deep. I teach a class every week called The Well, and the work of it, the premise behind it is deeper thinking. We're not gonna If you're gonna
Mm,
be a believer, know what you believe. And so that's kind of what
mm,
we're after there. You could find me on TikTok at unicorn.phd. And that's a mental health TikTok. All therapeutic psychoeducation knowledge. I broke down my dissertation work on there as well. And so a lot of free, I'm not your therapist, but I can be a therapist to provide therapeutic context while you are trying to find your own therapist, is the whole heart of behind that. And so there's that. You can find me on Instagram at unicorn.phd as well. It's mostly copying videos from TikTok and over to there as well. And then you can find me on Threads, is where you can find me being the most active, also at unicorn.phd. But I'm open to rap with anybody who I think knowledge should be free. And so if I can help you in any way, shape, or form, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will find room where I can.
perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We will talk to you all later. Goodbye.
Thank you.
A tremendous thank you again to Dr. Small for being a guest on my podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I feel better now about confronting my reservations about faith-based counseling and being willing to talk to people from that side of the world. And not be biased because of my own history. So thank you so much for talking to me today, and I hope you have all the best. I wish you all the best in the future. So thank you for being here. And thank you all for listening. If you have any questions for me or my guests in the future, please feel free to submit your questions on Instagram. That's at hypothesispod. You can also submit them via email at podcasthypothesis@gmail.com. Or if you would like to hear your voice on the podcast, you can submit an audio question on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/hypothesis podcast. You can find all of the articles we discussed in today's episode on my Substack. That's iramcintosh.substack.com. And follow all of our social medias. Again, Instagram is at hypothesispod. Our TikTok is also at hypothesispod. We are also on YouTube. And that is, I should have looked this up. Our YouTube is, I believe, under The Gay Ethnographer. I don't have a specific YouTube for the podcast. Maybe I should start that. Let me know if you want that. But all of our episodes are posted on YouTube if you would like to see our beautiful faces as well as listen to our voices. Please make sure that you are subscribed and rate, review, and share with all of your friends. When you listen to the episodes, please download them so that we know that people are listening. Shouting out into the void is great, but it's always nice to know that people are listening. So please make sure those episodes download when you listen to them. And share these episodes, because they mean nothing if people aren't listening. We're trying to build a community, not just a podcast. So let's fight misinformation together. Everyone have a wonderful day and go read a book. Bye.